Mr. Rijiju, welcome to NDTV. We meet at a time that is very critical for our own country, but suddenly we see some outside intervention, at least in the form of commentary. Why do you think Chinese have made it almost a ritual? Last year also in the April they said, we are announcing some names for some parts of Arunachal Pradesh to which you belong. You have been a member of parliament for many, many years now. Again this year the same story. What is the reason? I mean, what is it that the Chinese are wanting to achieve here?
I think the Chinese have certainly realized that here in India we have a government which is not compromising anything, especially with regard to our territorial integrity and also the extraordinary efforts to secure our border. Because the Chinese are used to an Indian government which will not develop the border areas. So now if you see all the statements coming from the Chinese authorities, they are objecting to the rapid infrastructure and other works which are going on in the border areas. They are complaining, in fact. That means till 2014, all the border areas right from Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh, bordering with China, these areas were deliberately left unattended. These areas were left underdeveloped, deliberately through a policy by the Congress and the UPA government. Now in 2013, interestingly, then Defence Minister A.K. Antony had admitted in the parliament that through a calculated policy, it was decided not to develop the border areas, and the reasons being given was totally unacceptable to us. The reason was silly also. It was a defeatist kind of a outlook and policy. That means Congress said if they develop the border areas by building road infrastructures, bridges and all, the Chinese will use those infrastructure and invade into our territory. So that means how Congress party had in fact given away in a way that these areas should not be secured fully. In any case, there are emergencies, they should be left for the occupation by the Chinese. So this is very clear. So now after Modi ji became Prime Minister, he started rapid development of the border areas. He started building roads, infrastructures, now basic amenities, electricity, power supply and 4G networks, as well as water and other health, education, all sectors you see across the border areas are now access to basic amenities. This has irritated the Chinese because they are not used to it. The Chinese were used to a meek Indian government as well as a very pacifist kind of policy towards the border areas. So that has not only infuriated them, but in a way it has irritated them. Now Prime Minister Modi is not going to have any kind of a compromising policy to secure our territory. Thereby he is going aggressively, not to disturb other, but to develop our own territory. So this new things what we are observing is the Chinese are started to giving names. They are standardizing the geographical names and thereby giving coordinates and giving some unfounded false narrative and very funny reasons. Now what I want to say is this misadventure and this kind of unethical conduct of the Chinese government is not going to have any impact on the ground, because we have nothing to do with China. Historically, people of Arunachal do not have any link with China. In fact, we have no word to refer to China. We have word for Tibet. Normally you have words for neighboring countries. So our people didn't know the existence of China because they were far off. It's only after 1959 when the entire Tibetan administrative region was occupied by the Chinese Communist Party. Then we came into direct contact, and then within 3 years of the occupation, the border conflict started in 1962.
Let me stop you here, Mr. Rijiju. But Mr. Modi has now been the Prime Minister for 1 decade.
Yeah.
And obviously your government's thrust, I know, I mean, we are well aware that you have also launched a special scheme for border villages for the first time in the history of independent India, where you're wanting to repopulate in a way the border villages. And even the opposition has lauded that scheme in so many ways, opposition chief ministers. But my point being that now you have been in power for a decade. Yeah. So what has changed suddenly? You know, last year Chinese did the same thing. This year Chinese are doing the same thing. You are saying that it is unethical conduct. Foreign Minister has said that this is ludicrous because, you know, this is as you said, completely going to change nothing and going to have no impact on the ground. But then Chinese probably are trying to strengthen their claim on those territories.
No, it will not strengthen their claim. Rather, it's making them look shallow, because there's no basis on their claims. If they really have something substantial, they will not do in this kind of very surreptitiously making some kind of a claim from here and there. So this is totally unacceptable to us. In fact, we are very furious. Although it's not going to have any impact on the ground, the historical facts, the reality, this is something which is there on the ground. But on the other side, we are totally, finding it very inappropriate for a responsible big nation like China. How can they get into this kind of unfounded, false and very funny kind of action? That how can you start naming another country's territory? As I said, we have no historical link with China. Where from they have this idea of started naming our geographical locations? So that is why I said we are furious. People of Arunachal Pradesh are taking strong exception to this kind of actions from the Chinese side, and we want to issue very strong message. I want to convey on the behalf of people of Arunachal Pradesh that the more Chinese are doing this kind of activities, it will only strengthen our resolve to remain stronger to defend our territory. We have been part of the larger subcontinent historical heritage, and in no way the patriotic fervor which is prevalent in Arunachal Pradesh is going to be diluted. Arunachal Pradesh is a state where you will not find even a single activities or movement which is detrimental to national security. No Arunachali will ever talk about secession. Our identity, our historical connect with the so-called our larger subcontinent history will remain intact. We are part of India. We shall remain part of India. It is inalienable territory which belongs to India and which will remain so. So that is why the Chinese action and this kind of misadventurous naming of the geographical locations will only make them look very cheap, very unlike a responsible nation, and I strongly condemn this kind of Chinese activities of naming geographical locations of another country's territory.
Mr. Rijiju, my final question on Chinese subject to you. Prime Minister recently went to Arunachal Pradesh, and probably one of the biggest defense infrastructure in that sector, also for civilian use, Sela Tunnel, was unveiled by him, inaugurated by him. He also said in one of his speeches that I had laid the foundation stone of this, and I am lucky that I am inaugurating it as well, and that is my government's commitment to this part of the country. Do you think that has infuriated the Chinese? Because obviously they also understand the military dimension of that infrastructure project.
You are partially right, as I also mentioned earlier, that the Chinese are not used to this kind of aggressive activities in the border areas. Because I know very well, those days, the Chinese army or their patrolling troops would come all across long tenure patrolling or short-term patrolling. They will come, they will put marks and go back. There used to be no confrontation or no any kind of coercive preventive actions from our side. So since 2014, our actions have become much more visible, and within 10 years, all the border points along the McMahon line are now connected with roads. There are hardly any location which remains unconnected, except those snow peaks and all. And secondly, the Vibrant Village program, which was launched by Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, has changed the character of the development of border areas. It has really galvanized the border people. So now our border people are feeling that we are no more neglected people. In fact, Modi ji has declared that these vibrant border villages are the first villages of our country. So thereby changing the total outlook. So when Prime Minister is inaugurating tunnels, roads, bridges in the border areas, definitely this has caused irritation to the Chinese. But how should we take care of their concern? We are developing our own territory. Modi ji is developing the border areas which were neglected for 60 years. So this is the call of the time, and thereby we are ensuring that India is not the India of 1962. We know China is very powerful, economically 5 times larger than India's GDP. They are well recognized great power. But so is India. India is not the India of 1962. India is not a tiny, small nation which can be just pushed around, which can be bullied. No. Under Modi ji, we are firm. We are not going to do any kind of misadventure. We are not going to unnecessarily poke our nose into others' affairs. But we are very firm in defending our territory. And no matter whatever propaganda people may do, we are absolutely clear about securing every inch of our territory, and that is solidly backed by the developmental activities and solid actions from the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rijiju. Thanks for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you.